Last video, we joined the Abzan out in the desert as they try to struggle through life in the Abzan armor deck. Today, we're going through the Mardu Surge deck, joining the Mardu Horde as they come flying through, trying to hit our opponents hard and fast. So let's talk about the ideas I would have running either Neriv on one side or Zurgo on the other. Let's kick this off with the Dragon Spirit Neriv Crackling Vanguard for 2, a red, a white, and a black. It's a 4/4 with flying and death touch, and when it enters, create 2 goblin creature tokens. And whenever it attacks, exile a number of cards from the top of your library equal to the number of differently named tokens you control. During any turn you've attacked with a commander, you may play those cards. So the wording on this sounds very funky, but it is actually kind of neat. So if you have Neriv at the front, you can swing and go ahead and get the cards as long as you have, a bunch of different stuff. And at bare minimum, you're getting 1 different token off of one of the red goblin tokens of this. Otherwise, say you had Zurgo at the front on the same deck and have Neriv in the 99, you can still swing with Zurgo and get the trigger off the dragon and be able to do those things. So if you're going to do a version of this particular commander, you're going to want a bunch of things that actually make different types of tokens. Now, it's not necessarily just creature tokens, it's also varying other bits and pieces, treasures, blood, just anything like that, even copied token creatures. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what we can come up with for this and make Neriv really supercharged. And that will start with things like Duke Older Raven Guard for 4, a red and a white. It's a 5/5 human noble soldier that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains haste and myriad. So what happens is you give it myriad, and in a game of commander, you swing it at somebody, and the other players in the pod are also dealing with a copy of that creature. Well, as long as you have, multiple copies coming out of that one creature, you're going to go ahead and have an additional newly named token for Neriv to get you an extra card off the top, and you're putting pressure on all of your opponent's life totals. Another great way to go ahead and get extra damage on the board and extra tokens is God Eternal Oketra for 3 and double white. It's a 3/6 double striking zombie god that says whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 4/4 zombie warrior creature token with vigilance. And when it dies, you can put it in 3rd from the top of your library. So this was just reprinted in the Precon for Aether Drift, and it makes a great piece here for this deck because it gives you a nice fat threat to work off of, as well as giving us a token generator to give us a differently named token to go with things for Neriv to exile. I'm also going to dip into the Foundation set with a really good reprint that came out of that set in Dragon Master Outcast for a red. It's a 1/1 human shaman that says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 6 or more lands, create a 5/5 dragon creature token with flying. This thing used to be super stupid expensive, up in the $15 to $20 range. And now it's all the way down to a couple of bucks because of the reprint in Foundations. I love this card. It actually comes in the Teamer Precon, but it makes a great piece to include here as well. And as I said, it doesn't really matter what kind of tokens these are to give us additional tokens. So this makes it a really good place to have black market connections. 2 and a black enchantment. Beginning of your pre-combat main phase, choose 1 or more. Create a treasure token, lose 1 life, draw a card, lose 2 life, or create a 3/2 colorless shapeshifter token with changeling and you lose 3 life. So in one go, you can give yourself a treasure and make a shapeshifter, pay the 4 life, but then you give 2 additional token types so that you have 2 different things named, so then you get 2 more cards exiled off the top with Neriv as soon as it swings. So this makes a great appearance in the deck. Then, of course, we have some nice synergy pieces that can go with all of this stuff. So let's talk about Combal Profiteering Mare for 1, a black and a white, 2/4 human advisor. Whenever 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield under an opponent's control, for each of them, create a tapped token copy of it. It triggers only once each turn, and whenever 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses a life, you gain a life. So more often than not, you're going to be able to drain your opponents a little bit at a time by making your own tokens, but most decks have some kind of ancillary way to make tokens, whether they're treasures, blood, gold, whatever, or other creature tokens. So you're going to be able to get little bursts of tokens off your opponents, which then gives you some new named tokens that you may not actually have in your deck, like elf tokens or those kind of things on your side of the board to get more out of Neriv. And then with all of our tokens that we are going to have running around, a great card is Caretaker's Talent. 2 and a white. Whenever one or more tokens enter, you can go ahead and draw a card. It only triggers once each turn, but you're going to be making tokens, and that will allow you to draw cards. When it becomes level 2, you can create a token that's a copy of another token that we already have in play. And then if you get to level 3, all your creature tokens get +2/+2. So then all those tokens you've been generating are going to get a little bit bigger and a little more threatening to our opponent's life totals. And then some new cards that I would really like to use in this particular build that I wouldn't include necessarily with Zurgo, but we'd include something like Inevitable Defeat for 1 and Mardu colors. It can't be countered. Exile target non-land permanent. Its controller loses 3 life. You gain 3 life. It's a nice little control-y type card that I think would fit really well in the deck. So I want to include it here with Nariv. I'd also want to include Aligned Heart. Now, this comes in the Jeskai Precon itself, but for 2 and a white, it's an enchantment with Flurry that says whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you put a rally counter on the enchantment, and then you create a 1/1 Prowess Monk creature for each rally counter on it. So as we are playing, multiple spells, we get to make more and more tokens. So this actually gives us additional tokens to work with Nariv, and then you can kind of build up an army if you're spamming your spells a couple at a time. Now, for the other legend that is included in this precon, let's take a look at Zurgo Stormrender. For a red, a white, and a black, it's an Orc Warrior 3/3 with Mobilize 1, which means you get to create a 1/1 tapped and attacking a red warrior creature token that has to be sacrificed at the beginning of the next end step. And whenever a creature token you control leaves the battlefield, draw a card if it was attacking. Otherwise, each opponent loses 1 life. Now, this creates a little bit of a thoughtful process for an opponent. They have to decide, okay, am I going to take the 1 damage off of that Mobilize warrior and then lose another life if I don't kill it in combat, or am I going to kill it in combat and give the controller of Zurgo a card? So there's a lot of interesting things we can do with Zurgo Stormrender, along with any other tokens that we have swinging along, because that counts for each token. It's not even, an individual collective thing. Whenever they die, if they were attacking, we're getting cards. Otherwise, each opponent's going to lose a life. So if you have a bunch of mobilized creatures, you're going to cause a bunch of death triggers at the end of turn, or they're going to give you a big clutch full of cards trying to stop the damage from coming through. There's a lot of fun possibilities with this one. So that means we're also going to want to create some tokens aside from the mobilized stuff. So let's talk about Enam Pakal, Thousandth Moon. For 1, a red, and a white. It's a human soldier, a 1/2 that whenever you attack with 1 or more non-gnome creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on Enam Pakal, and then create X 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens that are tapped and attacking, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Enam Pakal. So the nice thing is you do not have to be attacking with herself to get that trigger. So any of our stuff attacking in is going to put a counter on her, and then you're going to create a bunch of little 1/1 gnomes. And then with Zurgo out, they have the same choices as they would have had with that mobilized token. Do I block and give them a card, or do I take the damage? And that damage is going to start escalating because more and more and more of these gnomes are going to be coming out, and eventually it's going to create a big critical mass where it's like they're not going to have a choice. They're going to have to start blocking these gnomes, or they're going to get run over. And if they start doing that, you get to start reloading your hand. And since we're in black, let's go ahead and talk about a creature that makes tokens as we target their stuff with removal, and that is Gissa, the Hellraiser. For 3 and double black, 4/4 human warlock. Ward 2, pay 2 life. Skeletons and zombies you control get +1/+1 and have menace. And whenever you commit a crime, which is targeting your opponent's stuff or them with discard or whatever, create 2 tapped 2/2 blue and black zombie creature tokens. This ability only triggers once each turn. So if you have any kind of targeted stuff that's going to cause this to trigger, it's just a great way to go ahead and get a couple extra tokens. And those tokens, if they die in combat, who cares? Great stuff coming out of Gissa here. And then the last one I wanted to include here is Caesar, Legion's Emperor. For 1, a red, a white, and a black. It's a 4/4 human soldier that says whenever you attack, you may sacrifice another creature, and when you do, choose 2. Create 2 1/1 red and white soldier creatures with haste that are tapped and attacking. Draw a card, lose a life, or the Legion's Emperor here deals damage equal to the number of creature tokens you control to target opponent. So there's some good things coming on here. And what's neat is, if you have a mobilized creature like Zurgo swinging, you can actually sacrifice the mobilized token because you can stack it up where that mobilized token comes in first. Then the Legion's Emperor goes ahead and has its trigger on the stack, you can sacrifice that token. You'll get a card off of Zurgo's ability because it was already tapped and attacking. So you'll get a card off of that, and then you can create 2 more soldier tokens if you want, along with either drawing another card and losing a life or blasting your opponents for however many tokens you've already had created, prior to this, or just created in this combat, which in this case would be at least 2 damage, if not more. And since we're going to have a lot of dying tokens and things like that, I wanted to include a copy of Zulport Cutthroat and Blood Artist. These are just great pieces of synergy to include with the creatures that are dying left, right, and center, because these things have to be sacrificed at the end of turn. So they're just good things to go ahead and just get some ancillary damage off of and bolstering our life total at the same time. And then we have a whole mess of new cards I would include here because there is a lot of good synergistic pieces in the main set that they did not include with the Precon. So let's take a look at something like Avenger of the Fallen for 2 and a black, 2/4 Death Toucher with Mobilize X, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So as things get discarded, as things die in combat, if they get sacrificed, whatever, they end up sitting in the graveyard. Well, the Avenger of the Fallen can go ahead and give us some value and give us a bunch of Mobilize tokens coming off of it as it swings in. And with all of these things dying, Venerated Storm Singer is going to do a good job for us. 3 and a black, 3/3 with Mobilize 1. Whenever this creature or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So again, with all these Mobilized tokens dying all over the place, this is going to be additional gains and drains coming off of it. And with all these things coming into play and making a bunch of stuff, Shocking Sharpshooter makes a great inclusion here for 1 and a red. It's a 1/3 with reach that says whenever another creature you control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to target opponent. So basically it turns into an ability that not only does a zap for every creature coming into play, then it can also commit crimes for things like Gifts of the Hellraiser. And there's just a lot of good things coming off of this card. I also want to include a copy of War Effort for 3 and a red enchantment. Creatures you control get +1/+0. So all those 1/1s that we're generating off of the Mobilize are now 2/1s, making them that much more threatening. And then whenever you attack, you get a Mobilize essentially. Create a 1/1 red warrior creature token that's tapped and attacking that you sacrifice at the next end step. So there's just a lot of cool things going on and it fits perfectly in the deck. And then we have All Out Assault for 2, a red, a white, and a black. Your creatures get +1/+1.5 Death Touch, which bolsters all of our little tokens. And then if it enters and it's your main phase, you get an additional combat this phase, followed by an additional main phase. And you get to untap your creature so you can swing in, get your Mobilized triggers, whatever. And then you slam this down on the second main phase. Your stuff's that much bigger. And then you swing in again and you get, you just get all this pumped up double Mobilized goodness. They just keep on coming through. And speaking of Mobilize, we have a creature, Bone Cairn Butcher for 1, a red, a white, and a black. It's a 4/4 demon with Mobilize 2, and the attacking tokens you have Death Touch. So that makes the choice of your opponents just that much harder, because if they need to stop you from damaging them by blocking and giving you cards, they're also going to have to start coming up with ways to keep their creatures alive, because then it doesn't matter how big those little tokens are, 1/1 or not, they're going to kill their creatures, so they can't just sit there and chump block all day long. And since we have so many disposable tokens, because a lot of them are going to be dying at the end of turn anyways, Hardened Tactician is a great include from the main set. 1, a black, and a white. It's a 2/4 human warrior with 1, sack a token, draw a card. So like before we get to the end step, we can pay a colorless, sack one of our tokens, and get a card. So for however much mana you have lying around that you don't have any use for, start sacrificing those Mobilized tokens, draw a bunch of cards, and reload your hand. And then the last brand new card from the new set that I would include specifically in this version of the deck is Duty Beyond Death. For 1 and a white, as an additional cost to cast a spell, sack a creature. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn and put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So you can start sacrificing some of those disposable tokens, put a counter on all your stuff, and make them indestructible, making them survive, in between stuff. Maybe they're getting into some bad blocks on the other side of the board. You can kind of save stuff, or you can, do this on your opponent's turn. If they try to wipe, you can make your stuff indestructible. at the loss of, one of your more meager creatures in order to save your more important ones. And that leads us to cards that I would include in both variations of the deck, starting off with Gold Collar Gisa. For 3 black, 3/4 human wizard, tap and sacrifice another creature. Create X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens, where X is the sacrificed creature's power. So again, we have a bunch of disposable tokens that are going to be going out the door anyways, so why not use Gold Collar Gisa to split them up into multiple zombie tokens to give us additional tokens to attack with down the line. I'd also include a card from the Fallout Precons with Boomer Scrapper. For 1, a black and a red. It's a 1/1 human soldier that when it enters or attacks, you can lose a life and create a junk token, so that gives us an additional token to work with. And whenever a token you control leaves the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on the Boomer Scrapper. So this thing is going to grow really quickly with all these mobilized tokens leaving the battlefield every turn, and then going ahead and losing stuff in combat and whatever. It's going to grow the Boomer Scrapper. I'm also going to include Starry-Eyed Skyrider from the new set. It's a 1/3 for 3 that says flying. Whenever this creature attacks, another creature you control gains flying until end of turn. This would be really good with Zergo or anything that you need to get across but you don't want to put in danger. And your attacking tokens now have flying with this thing on the board. So that makes a really neat effect to, try to push all these mobilized tokens. Maybe they're getting blocked by a bunch of little stuff, or you're just trying to push that final bit of lethal. You slam this down and all of a sudden all your tokens can fly over and smack your opponents. And since we're in the mobilized mood, let's talk about Voice of Victory. For 1 and a white, 1/3 human bard with mobilized 2, your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. So this has 2 things going for us. 1, it can mobilize and create more or warrior tokens for us, and our opponents can't do anything about what we're trying to do to finish them off once you've slammed this thing down. And just like with the Abzan deck, Worthy Cost makes a good place here, because in the second main, any of these mobilized tokens are still hanging around. You can sacrifice it and then use that to exile something important on your opponent's side of the board. I want to include Baronstep Siege from the new set for 2, a black and a white enchantment. When it enters, choose Abzan or Mardu. If you choose Abzan, you get to put a counter on each of your creatures. And if you choose Mardu, at the beginning of your end step, if a creature died, you get to force each of your opponents to choose a creature and sacrifice it. Well, you're going to be losing a lot of those tokens, so they're going to start losing a lot of their creatures as well with that mode. And since we're in the mood of looking for a lot of different tokens for Nariv, or just, a way to bolster our ranks with Zergo, Mardu Siegebreaker is a great card to include. 1, a red, a white, and a black. It's a 4/4 human warrior with Death Touch and Haste. It says whenever this creature enters, exile up to 1 other target creature you control until it leaves the battlefield. And then whenever the creature attacks, for each opponent, create a tapped token copy of the exiled card that's attacking your opponent. And at the beginning of the end step, sacrifice those tokens. So there's just, a great way. It basically gives you myriad for whatever you've exiled with the thing. And you can do some just really silly, dumb things with this. So I want to include it in both versions of the deck as well. And of course, we can't not include the saga that's there for the Mardu Thunder of Unity. For Mardu colors, you get to draw 2 and lose 2 life. And then on chapters 2 and 3, you get to have it where whenever a creature you control enters each turn, they lose a life, you gain a life. Well, if you have a bunch of mobilized creatures, there's going to be a lot of life being lost and a lot of life being gained during those 2 chapters. And then the last card I would include in both variations of the deck is Windcrag Siege. 1, a red and a white enchantment. Choose Mardu or Jeskai when it enters. Mardu, if a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, it triggers an additional time. And Jeskai, at the beginning of your upkeep, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token with lifelink and haste. So it's just a really good card, but the Mardu thing is what we're really after in this deck, because the mobilized trigger is an attack trigger. So you're going to get double mobilizes, you're going to get any kind of like attacking triggers that are going to be going on. Windcrag Siege is going to copy it. So it makes a great include in the deck coming from the main set. So that's what I have for the Mardu Siege deck. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. What would you include as well? What did I leave out? What do you disagree with including here? I want to know all those things. And while you're down there, please like, share, comment, subscribe. All those things help the channel grow. And as always, thank you for watching. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.